All right. So this unit says Pythagorean theorem, but today we're actually going to start something called the Pythagorean theorem. Okay. And this is just a little intro. This guy here named Pythagoras discovered it, which is why it's called the Pythagorean theorem. And it says, here it is. Okay. This is the Pythagorean theorem right here. And again, this is only for right triangles. No other type of triangle will this formula work for. Okay. So a right triangle is made up of three sides. Okay. Two legs, which form a right angle, and opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. Don't say hippopotamus. Okay. Hypotenuse. Okay. Hypotenuse is always the longest side. So if three sides have a measurement, the longest side should always be the diagonal. Okay. And this is important here. The legs form the right angle. So when the legs come together here and here, it forms that right angle. Okay. All right. So this is what he came up with. Here you see a right triangle. Okay. Here you see the right angle. So always opposite is the hypotenuse. So in this case, we're looking for C, the C squared part. Okay. Which means we have A and B. So we just plug them into A squared and B squared. You square both sides. Okay. It states the sum of both sides is the sum of C squared. So again, 5 squared is 25. 12 squared is 144. So when you add them together, you get 169. And to get down to the last step, you have to square root both sides. Remember, we did that in the previous section when we were solving equations. And the square root of 169 is 13. And notice 13 is bigger than 12. It's bigger than 5. So the hypotenuse, when you get that hypotenuse side, it should always be bigger than both legs. If one of the legs happens to be bigger than the hypotenuse, more than likely you made a calculation error somewhere, because this number always has to be the biggest. Okay. So let's do one together before I have you work on one. So here's one. We're going to do number 2 together. So when you're given fractions, to avoid the whole adding common denominator stuff, turn them into decimals. Okay. So what is 3/10 as a decimal? 0.3. What's 2/5 as a decimal? 0.4, right? Okay. Now, same number, right? We just change it to a decimal. So now we completely eliminate the whole adding common denominators, all that stuff. So opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. So that's what we're looking to find. So in A squared plus B squared equals C squared, we're looking for the C. So we're going to plug the other two in for A and B. Okay. Now, on your calculators, remember the button you were hitting for a square root last week? Okay. You hit the second function x squared button. Well, the square now, all you need to do is hit the x squared button. Okay. So 0.3 squared is 0.09. And when I square 0.4, it's 0.16. Add them together. 0.9 plus 0.16 is 0.025, or 0.25, sorry. And now this is the part where to get C by itself, I square root both sides. This is what we've been doing in the previous section. So if you square root 0.25, you get 0.5 is your answer. So our side over here is 0.5 inches. And notice it's bigger than 0.4. It's bigger than 0.3. It has to be, because that's the hypotenuse side, the longest side of a right triangle. So that has to be the biggest number. Okay. So now what I want you guys to try to do right now, real quick as a table, is to try to do number 1. They give you nicer numbers for number 1, which is why we did number 2 together. All right. Try to do number 1. All right. So we're going to pause the video real quick and let you guys work through as a table number 1. Here's the formula. And if it helps, write it down and say, okay, here's the right angle. The side across the right angle is what we're looking for, right? That's the hypotenuse. which means this is a leg and this is a leg. So 8 squared plus 15 squared equals the hypotenuse, right? So what's 8 squared? 64, 15 squared. And when I add them together, I get 289. And now I square root both sides to get c by itself. And what the square root of 289 is 17. So this is 17 feet. And again, it's bigger than 15. It's bigger than 8. That's our longest side. So I'd say it's pretty correct. Okay. So that's find the hypotenuse. Now, sometimes we have to find a leg, like in our next example. Okay. So you can see here, this you can see that so they tilted this upside down, but here's the right angle, opposite side. They gave us a number. So now you see where c squared is, they put 2.9 in. So now we're finding a leg. They gave us a leg and the hypotenuse. So we still have to kind of go through the work to solve it. You can see here 2.1 squared is this. They subtract 4.41 to both sides. And then solve square root, and they get 2. Okay, so if we do number 4 together, we'll do the tougher one together. So again, here's the hypotenuse, here's the right angle, opposite side, that's your C. Okay, so 10.4 squared. Okay, we got to make sure, once you get everything plugged into the formula, it's simple. The hard part is making sure you're getting the right spots plugged in. You don't want to put these two numbers on the same side, because then you're going to make this side the longest side, which you can clearly see it's not. Right? So this can just be a squared plus 9.6 squared. I could have 9.6 squared plus b squared. It won't matter. It doesn't matter which leg you put it on. What matters is you got the 10.4 on the hypotenuse side, the c squared side. Okay? So if I type in 9.6 and square it in my calculator, I get 92.16. Okay? And 10.4 squared is 108.16. So how do I get a squared by itself? What do I got to do? I got to get rid of the 92.16, Peter. Subtract it, right? Because it's adding right now. I got to do its opposite. All that solving equation stuff just keeps coming back. So I'm left with a squared on one side, and when you subtract this, you get 16. Nice, easy number, right? Now, what's my next step? What do I got to do? Tyler? Square root both sides. The square root of a squared is a, which this will help us find the side. And what's the square root of 16? 4. How many people got 4? Okay, good. And it's 4 meters. So this side is 4 meters. And again, this is not bigger than this because this number here has to be the biggest side. See? So we did pretty good on that. So I want you guys to try number 3 now. Looking for B, so you can see opposite side of the right angle is we're finding one of the legs. So find the missing leg. I'm going to pause again here. Yeah, it's 30. So again, this goes into the c squared spot. And again, it doesn't matter where you put. If you want to use this as your B, that's fine. 16 squared plus b squared equals 34 squared. What was 16 squared? Caesar? 256. And what's 34 squared? That's a big one. 1,156. So when I subtract 256 to both sides, right, I get b squared equals 900. So when I square root both sides, b squared is square root is b, and the square root of 900 is 30. And there's your 30 yards. Now, in the next example, they said, okay, instead of taking a 2-dimensional figure, we're going to make it a 3-dimensional figure. That don't change anything. Now we just got to look at it a little differently. So here's a 3-dimensional prism, triangular prism, right? Here's your shape right here. Here's your triangle, right? And if you notice, they give us this side length and this side length. So we're looking for this side length, which is opposite the right angle. That's called the hypotenuse. So if you see, we're looking for C. They plug in 4.8 and 6.4 and solve. So let's do number 6 together. Same idea. Here's our figure. right there. Here's the right angle, so there's the opposite side. So this x is where the c part is, right? That's what we're looking for. So we're going to square these two sides and look for c squared. You can write x squared, it don't matter. So 6.6 squared plus 8.8 squared is going to equal c squared. We got two legs. So the number we get should be bigger than these two. Okay? It should not be smaller than 8.8 or 6.6. So 6.6 squared is 43.56, and 8.8 squared is 77.44. When I add these two together, I get 121. Well, that worked out nice, huh? Because what's the square root of 121? 11. And is 11 bigger than 8.8? Yep, it's bigger than 6.6. So there's our hypotenuse. So that triangular prism, that diagonal there is 11 feet. All right. So now try number 5. As a team, try number 5. We'll pause the video again. All right. So if you notice, they give you this x here. Well, that's the same side here, right? So these are your legs. It's the opposite side of the right angle, which is the hypotenuse. So 9 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. And 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144. When I add them together, 225. And I square root both sides to isolate c. And the square root of 225 is 15. So 15 yards is that diagonal. Okay. The last way we can find using it to find distances is on a graph. So let's show you this. Oh, wait a minute. Did you guys get that? I'm sorry. I know we're kind of fast. We're good? Okay. So here's a graph, right? They give you two coordinates, -2, 5, which is up here, right? And 4, -3, which is down here. So they make this little line here. And they're asking you, how long is that line? Well, what we can do is we can kind of draw in a right triangle, okay? By either going this way, like they did, or you could even go the other way. You can go, it doesn't matter, okay? But now, watch what we can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of that segment. Well, this side here is 8 units. If you go from this point down to this point. And if you go from this point over to this point, it's 6. So there's your 8 squared plus 6 squared. And then when you solve by square rooting both sides, you get 10 over here. And that's your hypotenuse. Now, the one thing about these kind of problems is you're always going to be looking for the hypotenuse, because we're going to have to draw in the straight lines, which is the legs. All right? So let's do one, and I got a little graph here to show you. We're going to do number 7 together. All right? So this is number 7. And where's my little packet at? Because I need to see the point. That is 3, 6, and 7, 9 are the 2 points. So 3, 6 is over here, right there, and 7, 9 is like right there. So here's we need to find the length of that segment. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it red just to kind of show, but I'm going to draw my legs. And again, I could go this way or I could go the other way. It doesn't matter. So from this point here to this point here, what's the distance? 4. And then from here to here is 3, right? So 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. Remember, this is our longest side. That's the diagonal. All right. So 3 squared is 9. What's 4 squared? 16. And when I add them together, that's 25. So what happens when I square root both sides? What's c? Square root of 25 is 5. So this distance here is 5. Again, longest side, right? So this is the 3, 4, 5. Probably the most popular right triangle combination there is. All right. So what I want you guys to do is try number 8 which is a little bit longer of a line, because that goes from at -3, -4, and 2, 8. Well, -3, -4 is over here, and 2, 8 is all the way up there. So there's the line segment. I'm going to use my straight line tool here because that's a long ways. That's the line we're looking for. All right. So we're going to have you guys find me the length of that line. All right. So I'm going to pause the video and let you guys work. All right. Let's see. So if we draw a right triangle. Right. So what's the distance from here to here? 5, and here 12, right? Now, without drawing a triangle, you could have looked and said, okay, the distance from -3 to 2 is 5, and the distance from -4 to 8 is 12, because you know you're looking for the hypotenuse. Well, what's 5 squared? 25. And what's 12 squared? And when I add them together, I get 169. When I square root both sides, what's the square root of 169? 13. And 13 was this distance here. And again, it should always be your biggest number. All right, I'm going to show you a couple videos before I have you do the self-assessment. And I'm going to pause the video here because I got them on the Schoology page. So, yeah, those are good videos. So, going back here, we're going to go down here, and I want you to do your self-assessment. Okay? Let's just see how you do on it. And then it's your pink sheet. Remember I told you to save those 2 sheets? But now there's a next section called 9.2, the Pythagorean Theorem, and that's the only thing you're going to use once you do the assessment first. So do 9, 10, 11, and 12. Do the assessment, and then we'll do it together, and you can fix anything that you need to fix. All right. So number 9, okay, here's the right angle. So the side opposite, this is your hypotenuse. So we're looking for a missing leg. So a squared plus 2.4 squared equals 4 squared. Okay. Well, 2.4 squared is 5.76. So I got to subtract it over, right, to get a squared by itself. And when I take away 5.76 from 16, I get 10.24. So if I square root both sides, the square root of 10.4 is, or 24 is 3.2. So 3.2 feet was your answer for 9. How many people got 3.2 feet? Okay. And again, we know it's because it's shorter than 4. That's the longest side. So that's good. All right. Now in 10, if you see the shape, there it is. So it's opposite the right angle. So now we're looking for the hypotenuse. So these guys are A and B. These are the legs. 1.2 squared plus 1.6 squared is going to equal C squared. So 1.2 squared is 1.44. And 1.6 squared is 2.56. So when I add them together, I get 4. That turns out really nice, huh? Square root both sides, and C is 2. And 2 happens to be bigger than 1.2 and 1.6, the longest side. So we're good there. All right, so 11, I'm going to go to the graph paper just to help out. So we're going to scroll over here. Let me wipe this out. All right. There we go. Okay. So they gave us a point of -5, 2. Right there. And 7, -7. Way down there. So what they're asking us is to find the length of this line right there. Okay. So draw a right triangle. Okay, whether we go across and down or down and across, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the distance from here to here is what? 9? Yep. And the distance from here to there is 5 and 7 is 12, right? So again, this is the longest side. There's your C. So 9 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. Well, 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144. And when I add them together, I get 225. What's the square root of 225? What is it? Square root of 225. 15. And again, there's no increment. It's just units because we're on a graph. There's no feet, inches. It's just 15 units. So 15 was the answer to 11. Anyone get 15? Okay, good. Now, the last part, which is just kind of like a silly little matching, answer these questions because it says different words, same question. Which is different? Find both answers. So which is the same? So which side, look at this little picture here. Which side is the hypotenuse? See there? See? Which side is the longest side? See? Which side is a leg? Tyler? Yeah, you could have said A or B here because that would have been right. And then which side is opposite the right angle? C, right? So these three are the same. And this guy is the different one. All right. So take a second on that pink sheet of paper to assess yourself, because as the quiz comes up, it'll help you identify what we need to study. And again, that is the homework for tonight, which starts on page 386, where it says 9.2 practice. Don't go back to the 9.1. You will be disappointed.